Well, we are very glad you all are here, and particularly we welcome Sam. Sam is a big deal in the universe of what we're attempting to do, and I'm particularly grateful to Lori, who months ago said, "What if we got Sam Simbaris to talk to us?" And so we do that tonight. Sam, you will find that most everybody that I'm seeing on this call is somewhat down the road to understanding housing first and our vision, but I don't think we can repeat things often enough, and thus we're recording this tonight. But we're all stakeholders in this crazy idea we have, and we're deeply grateful for you to join. Let's see. We're getting some messaging there on text, but I think that's just individual complications. I thought what might be best is if we went back and retraced how we got to housing first, because that truly has been a 10-year journey. And it may seem that this model, the more and more we talk about it and socialize it, um, appears out of the blue for some Caldwell folks. But there actually is a very sequential kind of lineage to this consideration. 10 years ago, when we decided to dedicate the Price building to this, a relatively young woman named Liz Clayson Kelly, who was running the Urban Ministry Center or the Men's Shelter, I can't remember. They both joined to become Roof Above. We had brought in every expert in the city over the course of a year to say, what would you do with this property? What would you do with Caldwell? What would you do with this neighborhood if we were to join the affordable housing cause? It was Liz, who now is CEO of Roof Above, who will be our partner, who said, you all have an opportunity to do something that most are not doing and cannot do. And so if you think about the affordable housing spectrum, on one end, you've got kind of workforce housing, teachers, plumbers, first responders, all the folks that Charlotte is making it extremely hard to afford. On the other end, you've got folks that might be called the hardest to house, the lowest income, and the folks that maybe bring their own challenges. Liz said, you all have a building, you all have property. I believe you can raise this money. I believe you ought to go as low on the ladder. She didn't use that phrase, so that's mine, as you possibly can, because she knew Caldwell's heart. And so the first expression of that was, well, we'll go lowest income we can, which is what we're doing is 30 to 50% area median income, which is far lower than almost any other affordable housing project you're going to find in Charlotte. Overlapping that and kind of inherent in that are taking on folks that have challenges, have hurdles, have barriers to house. And so these are chronically homeless folks or chronically unhoused folks, I guess you'd say, lowest income. And they're going to bring some life challenges, maybe addictions or disability or mental health issues, or just maybe a bad long string of bad luck. And so we have arrived at the housing first model in a fairly consistent approach going back 10 years to say, we believe we are called to help those that others are not called to help, cannot help, don't have the financial means to help. And so Sam and Lori are going to continue our education about what that means. What does it mean to take in and give shelter to folks that today are probably on the streets? And what is the impact of that to give them stability, to give them hope, to give them shelter, and to the degree that they want to be a part of our lives, give them love and support. And so that's how we got here. It is an unconventional model that we're adopting, but the data, as Sam will tell us, the data demonstrates that this is a more successful model. over time. And so we're just living into who we think God calls us to be at the corner of Park and Fifth. So, Lori, back to you.
All right. So welcome everyone. And I'm sorry, John, I was missing our, between the screen cues. And so I'm more than happy to open with just a quick word of prayer, and then we can jump into the program. And I'm going to give a few little operating notes so you can actually see Sam a little bit better while he's talking. But let's open in prayer. God, we are grateful for the places we sit right now, for the warmth, for knowing that shelter and people surround us and love surrounds us. We look to your guidance and to what you've already taught us through so many things that work, of how to take the next steps and how to do this mindfully and get prepared as individuals and as a congregation to move forward. In your name I pray. Amen. All right. Well, I'm so tickled to be here. I feel like I get to introduce Sam Cimberas, who I began working with nearly 20 years ago when I was starting. It's crazy. I was starting. I was a social work intern who was assigned, go figure out housing first for Richmond, Virginia, as a pilot for the state. That was my assignment. And our first effort failed because we were trying to find a hotel and turn it into what was then a direct access to housing model, which was another program that was doing something similar to Housing First. And when that failed, I was like, well, we can't let this fail. So what will I do? So I started looking, and I found the Pathways to Housing model in New York. And Sam came down and became technical assistance for Richmond and the state of Virginia. And through Virginia Supportive Housing, we piloted a Place to Start, which was the first Housing First program in Virginia. It was an amazing opportunity for me as a new social worker, as someone who had been in the housing and community development field, to watch Sam work. And it was a lifelong education. And it was consistently a reminder for me back to my theological roots, because I would always see such parallel between the way to build community, the way to be in community with people, in what Sam was bringing to us and what his team was bringing to us. And so to me, I drank the Kool-Aid from like minute 2 of reading, and then watching what I saw happening with Pathways to Housing versus kind of what I saw and what I heard a lot of well-meaning service providers talk about how they were to help people. And it was just such a sea change that it really shifted my trajectory, I think, as a scholar and as a what they call pracademic. And so I'm just really tickled to introduce Sam to you tonight. Since then, you will, if you pay attention at all, he has worked internationally. He is international. I think you were born in Greece, Sam. You have multiple citizenships, including the United States. But we see a lot of persistence and I think scrappiness that Sam has come back to this over and over. And it has literally changed the way we talk about and do homelessness in this country. And so I'm really tickled to bring this conversation to you today. So I want to do Sam, before I give it to you to take over, I want to do just a couple of things to help folks. If you're not seeing a little red microphone on your screen, try to find that. If you're looking at the bottom left of I think it's the bottom left, yes, of your screen, and you see a little green thing happening, just click that and that'll turn it red. And if you want to see Sam's face bigger than in just a bunch of little, Hollywood squares, you can go up to the top right corner and hit view, and there'll be something called speaker. And that will focus on the voice of the speaker. You can always come back to gallery when you want to kind of see everybody's face, but that way you might be able to see Sam a little bit more. And how we're going to do this evening is Sam's going to just speak with us for about 15 or so minutes I have some planned questions for him. And then honestly, it's our time, your time to really start to ask some questions. And I will tell you, I've watched this with young practitioners. I've watched this with community members. I've watched this kind of Q&A where people said, they can't move into the house. They'll put toilet paper, no, not toilet paper. They'll put glass down the toilet. I clearly remember this example, Sam, in Richmond, when people thought this person can't be housed because they'll put glass down the toilet. And that was the reason that they were thinking, oh, and this was a leader, well-intentioned leader. But I've watched him kind of handle all the hard questions. So there isn't a bad question. And quite frankly, we need to start getting these questions out if they are living in you. Because that will help us get ready for bringing people thoughtfully onto campus. So, Sam, I'm so excited you're here. I'm going to turn it over to you. And then whenever you're ready, we'll just jump into a few questions.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Lori. It's a pleasure being with you. And Reverend Cleghorn, wonderful to meet you. And to you all, thanks for joining. As Lori said, we go way back, and I do a lot of traveling, but you meet certain people along the way that are like your people, and I think the success of this program, in part, is because you meet the right people along the way, and Lori Thomas certainly has had the good fortune of meeting her early in her career, and she's had a tremendous contribution to all this. And so I'm honored to be introduced by you, Lori, and grateful for our relationship all these years. I guess, there's I want to commend the community for taking this on. I mean, a lot of people express two kinds of opinions about homelessness, like how do we get these people off the street? And there's a lot of criminalization going on in the country, and we are a country of definitely two strong factions. But and there's another group that expresses concern and is supportive, but doesn't really take action. There are very few people that are willing to actually move to the position where you are, where you're taking action to actually, address the problem. And I just want to commend you for that, because I think, not only for what you're doing in your community and the people that will be directly affected, but there are so many communities of faith that want to or express an interest that will be watching this, and I think you're setting a precedent for how faith communities can actually be of really direct service more than just the emotional support. So, when I heard about this, I wanted to join to support and commend and be as helpful as I can in terms of answering questions about it, or not just this evening, but as it goes on, because you're building a building and you're going to have people living in it, whether you acknowledge it or not. You're going to be in a long-term relationship with people who haven't committed to being a long-term relationship with you, by the way. You have to commit first. That's sort of the daring part. You got to put your love out there first, and you might be rejected, but like every relationship we're in, we have to no pain, no gain. And it's also not a program for people that are not interested in taking risks, whether it's emotionally or whether it's like taking another chance on a person that hasn't had much faith put on them. So all of this to introduce this idea of housing first, I want to dispel the easy brand and easy label of that very program definition, because for me and the way that the program is actually practiced, it's not actually about housing. The program is actually about people. I mean, it doesn't really have the same kind of identity as it would if you called it a people first program, because there are so many. But I want to assure you that this program is all about putting the person first and about the relationships that we have with people and how we help them. And what is unique about Housing First is how we help them also includes housing. So that's how I would frame it. It's not like we put people in housing and then there's some relationship. It's all about the relationship, and it includes housing. So just to shift the emphasis on that. This is a program, as you've heard, that's very well developed. You know, we've been doing Housing First for 25 years. It was a program that was very controversial initially because there were many ways in which this program goes against the grain of conventionally held beliefs in the mental health system, in the addiction treatment system. In both of those systems, there has been and continues to be, by the way, they're still the predominant systems, and we are still Plan B. You know, it's not like, you know, we're the mainstream, but at least there is now a Plan B where there wasn't. And in the predominant systems, you know, there's a very strong belief that people who are suffering from mental health or, you know, severe mental health, mental illness diagnoses or addiction cannot live in a house until they're clean or sober, or if they or in treatment. And you know, one of the more interesting and kind of exciting books, you know, in my field, there's not a lot of field. It's not fiction, so, but it was exciting to read "Homelessness is a Housing Problem" by Greg Colburn and Aldrin. Because in this book that came out in 2022, they talk about this in an informed way. I mean, I have observed it in a day-to-day clinical setting where people from the street, you know, the very people we pass by often on the streets and think, oh my God, this person is so vulnerable. How can we need to help them. You know, do they need food? Do they need clothing? Do they need, you know, someplace warm to stay? And actually kind of that it's unimaginable to think that this person could actually move into an apartment and manage it fine. But we couldn't succeed in persuading people to go into the treatment and housing system, which was the only, and still is in many communities, the only way to get into housing. So housing is offered as a leverage or a reward for participation in treatment. And if any of you are in the mental health or treatment business, I think you would appreciate the fact that treatment shouldn't be something someone does to get something else. Treatment should be, you know, a journey in and of itself for helping you understand your life better and do better. But it sort of sets up the goals of treatment in a secondary importance to, you know, oh, I'll participate in treatment because what I really want is housing. Well, that approach works, you know, for 30 or 40% of the people, but the others continue to stay on the streets or in shelters or in and out of jail. And we needed this Plan B, and Plan B was, in fact, to ask people, what is it about Plan A that doesn't work for you? And how do we develop Plan B? So this is where it comes back to me, where the issue is not about housing, it's about people, because we only got to housing by first asking people what it is that would be helpful to them. People who ordinarily have no voice in the professional discourse, people in public health systems oftenly told what to do and how to do it and what it is they need to do to comply, were being invited to the table to participate in a conversation about what it is that was important to them. So this housing first idea really, at its very foundation, includes the voice of the people that are most affected by the program, the people who are going to be in these apartments and participate in these services. And I would say maybe that's the foundation for your own housing project, which is from its very foundation, include the people who are going to be living in the project as you design, plan, talk about so that there's a sense of both input and ownership. And it's not like you're building a place to put people in, but you are together constructing a new home for this part of your community. And so that's how we got to this idea. And, you know, a lot of the mechanics of it have to do with the support that's offered after people are housing. I mean, a great deal of the conversation is all about, you know, can people get in and can't, and all of this. The answer is yes, people can get it, you know, do very well. People who have managed to survive on the streets of America and be able to get food and know where to sleep and where it's safe and how to, you know, their very existence is a testament to their resilience, creativity, and survival skills. For someone who's survived on the street, believe me, it's a piece of cake to live in an apartment where the bathroom's not 5 blocks down, but right next door, and the bed is not a sidewalk in some crevice of an office building, but, you know, right, you know, it's easy, okay? It's not about functional ability at all. And the point about the homelessness is a housing problem. What Coburn does is he looks at a national landscape of people who are diagnosed with severe mental illness. There's about 14 million people in the country that are getting Medicaid services for severe mental illness, 14 million. And when we do the national point in time count of the number of people who are homeless in America, 500,000 people. So when you look at the correlation between severe mental illness and homelessness, it's zero. And Greg says, well, you know, so it's not about the severe mental illness, because lots of people have severe mental illness, but if they have family, if they have, you know, a relationship, they have support, if they have resources, lots of people with severe mental illness are managing it well. In fact, people with severe mental illness are driving cars, you know, driving Ubers or teaching school or, you know, working in banks. It's like, it doesn't disqualify you as a participatory person in life because you have this diagnosis, you know. And he makes exactly the same claim for severe addiction. You know, most people with severe addiction are having 2 martini lunches and, you know, wheeling and dealing. Not really, but, you know, they're not homeless. You know, of the 16 million, very, very, very few are homeless. So if these conditions don't a priori, you know, put you in homelessness, they're challenges to manage, but clearly, you know, with the right supports and resources, they can be managed, is the point. So even poverty, by the way, I mean, most people who are poor is a great many more than the 500,000 that we have who are homeless, you know, find family support. They're sleeping in people's extra rooms, you know, like it's the only thing, by the way, I don't want to give away the, you know, the ending in case you warm up to reading this kind of stuff. The only thing that predicts homelessness in America is the price of rent in a community and how much of the person's salary is being spent on that rent. Cost of rent and individual rent burden were the only significant predictors on a national scale of homelessness. And then when you look at where is the most homeless, it's like from Portland to San Diego and from Boston to Miami, you know, because like all the coastal cities are the most expensive rent-wise. And you look at the rest of the country, not so much. So anyway, I found that illuminating just from a big picture perspective, you know, on homelessness, and also to assure you that, you know, because someone has challenges like mental illness or addiction, that's really not going to be an issue in terms of their adjusting to housing. Point 2. This is a very difficult program to operate because it is counterintuitive all the time, and, you know, and full of surprises. And we're going to be working with people that are going to be vulnerable in many ways and are going to need a lot of support. And here's the tricky part. They're not always going to acknowledge that they need a lot of support. So we need to figure out a way to be present and supportive and loving, even when someone is pushing us away. You know, that commitment that we make, that's going to be challenged time and again, because people are going to say, you know, I got a place, I'm good, I don't need you, and you know, and they're not doing well. And how do we continue to, without being either intrusive or coercive, to engage, you know, to engage in a way that assures the person that you're there to help them, you're on their side, that you have the patience to see it. This is a long-term commitment, like I said. So, you know, we're not in a hurry. We don't want to create crises about something has to be solved right away. But all of that is requires thoughtfulness, requires patience, requires an attitude of acceptance and humility that will challenge all of us. And I don't think any one of us, I certainly can't, it's not something you can do alone, because you need to talk to somebody about all of the frustrations of that. And I think it's very important that everybody working on this project in this community adopts this, not only as a building, but sort of the philosophy and the whole approach about it, because when things get difficult, you will need to support each other. Otherwise, it's not really doable, and you'll need the most support, of course, when things were most difficult. You know, first time you might have to evict somebody because like the situation is terrible, and like, why did we do this? And like all the doubts will come in. That's when you have to remember, look, you know, 19 out of 20 is very good. I mean, we're going to have problems. I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, if you don't want problems, don't do this. You're going to have problems, but you're only going to get through these problems in a way that requires all of you to support each other and recommit to those values, you know, because ultimately it's a program of values and a program of principles, you know, and really, you know, we believe in these principles. We believe that people should have a say-so in their lives. We believe that people have a right to housing. They don't have to earn it. We believe in love, respect, creating possibilities. And you commit to those values, and then you support each other, reminding yourselves about them when things get tough. So maybe I think I'll stop talking, because, you know, I could talk about this for a while. I've been doing it for a while, but I think those are the two main things I want to say, and then we'd have a little time for more questions and answers, if that's okay.
Yeah, Sam, thank you so much for that introduction. And I know the group that's here has heard some of what the Housing First model is, but I think it really helps to hear it framed like you just framed it. Really, in terms of this is a model that works, and it is hard. And so, but before we dig into other folks' questions, I want to just, if I can, direct you to a couple of questions. I mean, it's clear to me now. It's been clear to me since working with you for almost 20 years, off and on, that you are deeply moral and spiritual. At one point, I think I asked you if you were Jewish because you kept quoting Jewish theologians and Hebrew scripture. And then you reminded me that you were born in Greece. But could you talk a little bit about how your own faith journey and faith traditions have impacted your work on Housing First, and maybe even how Housing First has impacted your faith and spirituality?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that a little difficult to answer. I would say that for me, the spirituality in this is more derived from a lived sense of community. You know, I mean, you know, as you mentioned a couple of times, I grew up in Greece in a small rural village, and as we all know, you know, the whole world is actually made up of small villages. We all have a small village. But in this small village, everybody knew each other, and the idea that somebody is on the street or someone would lose their house because they were having trouble with drinking or mental health issues was not part of the. You continue to belong to the village no matter what you're going through, good times and bad times. So the inclusiveness of that, I mean, it's unthinkable. You'd be walking home and there would be, Petros on the street. And it's like, Petros, what are you doing on the street? It's like, well, I just had a fire in my house and well, come over, we'll make you dinner. Like there's no separation. There's no separation. And I think that kind of inclusiveness is essential, I think, to embracing a program like this. I think the Housing First program is a lot about that kind of inclusiveness. I think there's also there's a moral and social justice piece to it, because it's completely. I'm old now, and I never understood it when I was young, and I still don't understand it today, like how we can actually have a problem in a country of this level of wealth that is totally fixable financially. Like it's really, if we had a different kind of government and tax structure and distribution of income, we wouldn't have homelessness. So that is troubling always, and it seems that in creating these programs, you can create a sense of community that, even in the context of a larger context of injustice and unfairness and inequity, you can have islands of social justice and inclusiveness and respect. So, and then over time, because this has always been a program from the ground up, talking to people and building up as you go. And maybe as we build more and more of these communities of inclusiveness and justice, we'll light up the country from the ground up instead of expecting it to change from the top down.
Yeah, thank you so much. Another question I have, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, that we're kind of on the forefront of this work, but have you seen faith community? I mean, you do this, you've done this in so many settings. You've done this in many different international settings and many settings in the US. What have you seen faith communities engage in this work? What does it look like when they do? I know we're kind of on the front end of this this trend, if you would.
Yes.
Maybe we're starting. But yeah, what have you seen? And what gives you hope and maybe even some concern as you're reflecting on that?
Well, I mean, I think the thing that you're doing, I mean, there's faith communities is such a broad term, really. I think that a great many of the shelters, for example, in the United States are run by churches or synagogues, and that's a shelter model. And I think if you want to talk broad brush strokes, many faith communities offer help to people who are poor from a charity model. Mm-hmm. And this Housing First thing is not a charity model. This is an empowerment model, and that's a very different way of offering help. And I think you are distinctive and unique that way, that not only are you philosophically adopting a model that is empowering to people and not requiring them to be grateful to you, kind of, in short term, like shelters are. You're actually giving up land and building something and giving people, voice, So I find that exciting. I think that's what you're doing is really, really cutting edge. And I haven't heard many examples like this, really. More of the examples are the traditional shelter and short-term charity model programs. Mm-hmm. It's not. I'm not disparaging the work that goes on in that context. I'm just contrasting it to different ways of the faith community addressing this issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. What I would love to do is to pivot into how do you think we should be preparing for, and I think I've told you this, this is called, the name of the housing is called Easter's Home. And that name is based on, is one of the enslaved people held by the wealth that built this congregation, the church, the physical plant, the material wealth. And so it is our way of recognizing what is in the ground here, and then how we move forward. And so Easter's Home is the name of the setting. And so how would you begin to tell us to prepare for this? That's, I think, what we're all interested in hearing.
Well, I love that it has that kind of the name has that kind of a reference to the history, because that history continues today. In every single state in the United States, the people who are on the street and homeless are overwhelmingly African American or minority, right? So, more Hispanic represented on the West Coast, but all up and down the East Coast, Atlanta, 90%. I don't know what your percentages are. Washington, D.C., 90%. So this is calling it Easter's Home, for this project has some restorative quality to that. I think that the most challenging thing that you will face is how you will provide the support services and the extent to which you can succeed in not creating a residence, but creating a home for the people living there, and the kind of home where they feel an ownership to it, so that they are not coming to live in your home, but they come to see it as their home. Mm-hmm. So that's the goal. I would say that's the goal that would assure your success, and then how you achieve that is really a matter of all kinds of practical considerations, like how many people, how will you support people, what will the support services look like. I don't know how far you are in the design of it, but having common spaces so people have a sense of community rather than an apartment building. It's in the architectural fabric of the building, and it's also in the way that the social services respond to people in the building. So I don't know the actual plan. I mean, I've seen the architectural plan, but I don't know what the plan is for the social services piece. But I think it would be important to have the people providing the social services, have a conversation like we're having, so they're on the same page about how we're going to be doing this work, and have that philosophy, and design the program in a way that assures the people living in it are meeting with you all to collaborate in whatever design you want to take it to. I mean, you're going to start with something and it's going to evolve into something else as it goes, and to be open to that.
Yeah. And so below you on my Hollywood Squares is Joe Hamby, who is our a representative from Roof Above, who is our service partner right now. And so Roof Above is, and you may recall being at Moore Place, that is Roof Above. And okay. So I'm meeting with that scattered site team. So they're actually considering it a kind of a hybrid between their scattered site team and their on-site team. So we're feeling good about our partner relationship, and Joe's been a part of the training and preparation committee as well. So
well, that's great. Okay, you're well along the way.
Yes, and we're really thinking hard about common space. The building is rather small. We're making do with the frames that we have.
It could be at the church. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be necessarily just to provide a common space. Maybe doesn't need to be in the footprint of the building.
Yeah.
Joe, were you going to say something? I saw your microphone go on and off.
No, I was just prepared. I do have a question, just kind of related to what you've been talking about. Kevin Nye, who is an author that we've been engaging with this past year, he says he's never met a service resistant person. He has known service resistant communities and service agencies. And I was just curious. I just always continue. I find myself challenged by that because it just reminds me. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I studied psychology, and very early on, you study Freud, and Freud, I don't know, has all these case studies, and anytime his patients disagreed with his interpretation, he would call that resistance, and like it wasn't that Anna O had a different point of view about this. It was like, she didn't agree with the Herr Dr. Freud, And I think that tradition still exists in the mental health system and in the addiction treatment system and in the prepare yourself for housing system. And it's very, very often used as a defense for, I think, treatment failure. Like the provider cannot acknowledge their own failed efforts to engage, and they blame the client by calling them treatment resistant or not ready for housing, because it's not really an offer for housing. It's an offer for going to the shelter and be sober for a bunch of months, and the person has already tried that 6-7 times, and it's like, no, you know what, I'm good here, I'm just going to stay here. And then resistant, that's not actually resistant, that's kind of an informed refusal of something that has been tried and failed many times. And so engagement was like the whole thing for us. Like, how do we engage people that have been on the street and don't want to go anywhere? And for us, it was listening, just listening, and once you listen and the person is telling you what they want, then this whole thing about resistance goes away, because it's all about what they want, and then they're already motivated. You don't become someone trying to make them do something. You become someone trying to help them get to where they already want to go. So that battle for initiative is completely shifted over if you relinquish the power of decision making to them. Thanks for your question. That was actually that's where we were going, right, Lori?
Yes, I think that's perfect timing, Joe. We can open this up. Go ahead,
Lori?
and John, you can take the Q&A session.
Well, I'll be happy to do that. I think everybody on the line, and thank you so much, Sam. I think everybody on the line probably knows these things, but I thought I would level set for some of the issues that Sam has brought up that people may be wondering, and that way we can address some questions before they're even asked. I think everybody knows that we've hired, or we are working on an agreement with Roof Above, and Ellie Dye, who's on the line, and Lisa Thompson are negotiating that agreement. It's very much on Roof Above's terms and very much on the terms of Housing First. But yet there are some details that we're working through. So just know that Ellie and Lisa represent you, along with several others of us, in that effort. Sam has mentioned support, and I want to just underscore that we did a year of due diligence trying to figure out who would be the best, quote unquote, operator of Easter's Home. We're building an apartment building, but we are not social service workers or experts in the field. And so we knew we needed those who are, and Roof Above demonstrated head and shoulders above that they are the best partner. So in terms of supportive services, every resident will have offered supportive services, 1 to 2 visits a month. The ratio of case manager to resident, I think Roof Above is aiming to have it be a little lower or closer at Easter's Home than the rest of their properties, in part because they know this is a distinct project and we're in a high visibility neighborhood. And then, so the professionals will be handling supportive services. Where we come along is, alongside them with on their terms and listening first and second and third. What are your goals? What is your direction? What is your path? And do you want to have anything to do with us at Caldwell, and how can we help? So we know that on a 24/7 basis, Roof Above will be operating Easter's Home. We will then complement them with community and belonging and meaning and purpose and all those things once we get to know them. And so I just thought that it might help to just remind everybody that all the issues that Sam is laying out are very much top of mind with the Easter's Home leadership team. You see Ellie there. The agreement is not finalized, but we're ironing things out right now. So, if you do have questions or if you have concerns you want us to hear, Ellie's here, and Jeff is on the board. I'm on the board of Easter's Home, and Joe is representative of Easter's Home. So I'll shut up, but I thought it might help to just kind of level set what we already know about what we're working on. And with that, back to you all. I'm going to do my best to answer questions. Let's raise hands either digitally or quite visibly on the screen. And so who would like to ask Sam a question? Jeff Brown.
Thanks, Sam. Jeff Brown here. I loved your comment about coming to see it as their home and not our apartment that they live in. And we all are by nature want to be successful and want to be outcome oriented. How do we think about measuring whether we're being successful in this? And how do we talk about it? And how should we not talk about it based on your experience?
I think that the most important takeaway message in terms of success has to lead with housing stability. I think that, I don't know if you have the capacity to do a bit of an evaluation here, but I think if you're going to take vulnerable people from your community and you're going to know how many years they were homeless before they moved in, and that they were from this community on the streets or in and out of shelters for years, and they moved into this place and they're housed for a year or 2 years, however long. That's what everyone wants to know in terms of ending homelessness. So I would say that, number one. But then there are all these other things about quality of life, because someone is housed and then what happens is a natural question. And I think that is, in part, the housing stability is going to be created by the support, but the full inclusion into the community is much more than case management. And I think you can have indicators of, do people reconnect with family? Do they take a course? Do they, to what extent do they participate in life that is beyond this program, is an indication of your success in having integrated people. And to the extent that you can keep track of those things, I think that would help to tell the story of the building and the program and how it all turns out. I'd like to say one other thing in relation to Reverend Cleghorn's comment about offered services. I think that we offer treatment, but the home visit is not an option. It's not like, I think you should be clear with people that this is a supportive housing program and we need to take care of it, and we'll be visiting you at home. You don't have to, take a drug test. You don't have to take medication. You don't know treatment, but the visit in terms of a wellness check for you and the building, we're going to do that. And so people should not be surprised when people show up, So yes, treatment is offered, other things are offered, but we're going to visit. I mean, you need that. Okay. There's another piece, and this relates also to Jeff's question about how do we improve outcomes beyond housing stability. I don't know you, but I have some assumptions about what you can offer in terms of people having a life outside of the program. I mean, people would love to go to cultural things. They'd love to go see a local high school ball game. They might go to a concert. Doesn't have to be professional, just like participation in the usual things that we all enjoy. And as you get to know the people in the building, you know, you're not going to take groups of people. You'll take one, maybe two, you know, people who have interest in a museum or taking a class outside or a community garden project, or maybe going for a walk with your dog, or even walking your dog. You can, you know, hire people to do your work. You know, people are going to be still desperately poor when they move in here, by the way. And the poverty is huge, you know, in terms of people needing extra income and maybe not ready for a full-time job. But if any of you can offer, like, you know, informal work, off the table, off the books kind of things, I think that's terrific stuff, you know, because it's we can talk about all these options, but every option you think about costs money, even if it's transportation to get there. And we're going to be housing people that are on a disability check, and they're going to be paying 30% of their income. And, you know, poverty I think of it as a crushing disability, just like mental illness and addiction. It's like it lowers the ceiling so dramatically for people's lives that it hurts them in terms of their options. So the extent to which you can expand that horizon and help them participate in real cultural terms, I think would be really a gift.
Pat, I think I saw you had your hand up.
It was less a comment, question than more of a comment, but I think our basic attitude has to be beyond what we've been taught in this country about, you know, the homeless are lazy and they just don't want to work and they're not going to do their things. And seems to me that we have a couple of things that we can depend on in place of those attitudes. And one is that these are all children of God, made in his image, and that they are equally human just as we are. And then the attitude I think that we need to have is the fruit of the Spirit: love, peace, joy, patience, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, and humility. Because we're not going to fix their lives. What we're trying to do is support them so that they can fix their lives. And so I don't know, Sam, what you would think about that, but that's what came up in me as you talked.
I think that's exactly right. I think also, in relation to your first comment about all of the stereotypes we're fed and how do we shift that, for me, I think that getting to know people, you know, is you don't even have to worry about fixing that, because just getting to know people, that happens organically. When you listen to their stories, it's like, oh my God, I have no idea, you know, and you would have the same emotional response of, you know, the empathy and the compassion, and just getting to know them is you realize those stereotypes are about something else altogether, because this, you know, very few people, you know, like real people, humans that show up actually fit those stereotypes. You know, yeah. They don't fit their stereotypes any more than they do fit their diagnostic categories. You know, everyone has this diagnosis, you know, but it's like, it doesn't say anything about them. They're as different as the rest of us. So I think the day-to-day contact is the best way to really understand this whole issue.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for reminding us, Pat, of our values that do mesh with Housing First. Questions? Who has one?
Comments are also welcome. I mean, how did this all sit with you?
Now, while people are thinking, I was just going to ask you to talk about peer support and the role that really played in the development of the model and in the success. And actually, you know, when programs are successful, they have it. So I wondered if you might talk about that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, peer support, you know, if everybody knows the definition, people with lived experience of homelessness, mental illness, or addiction, all three. But that the participation of people with lived experience in the program, it was fundamental to the very design of the program, you know, right from the start. So that was built into it, and we had kind of a deliberate focus on people with lived experience at all levels of the program, not just you know, as the case managers, but people were, you know, the program didn't exist before we invented it, so we had a lot of flexibility. We had people with lived experience on the board and people with lived experience as supervisors, people with lived experience, you know, throughout the organizational structure. But the peer, it kind of goes to Pat's point about, you know, the stereotypes and things that were fed all the time. We're fed these things by the media all the time. Homeless, mentally ill, or dangerous. You know, there's a lot of criminalization, a lot of really bad press, you know, and misleading, and not at all based on real evidence, just propaganda. And the peer is a really like, they sort of, in my view of their role, is not only do they represent what success looks like, because this is someone with lived experience now working, you know, full-time helping others. And so it reminds the rest of the folks on the team that recovery is possible, but it also tells the person who's in the apartment who just moved in and is still struggling that, hey, look, you know, maybe one day I could be like this person, I can get a job as a peer, you know. So it inspires the message of hope for both, you know, the provider group, the support group, and also the recipients. And I would say peers, because of their lived experience, understand like viscerally what the client is going through. You know, it's not like an intellectual understanding, it's a visceral understanding, and the level of empathy and the kind of support that peers can offer. I know how you feel, I've been there, is only a statement that a peer can make, you know. So and that's enormously validating to the person hearing it. And so I can't say enough about the role of peers. I mean, essential, you know, and inspiring.
Jeff.
Yeah, I like your point about building the relationships informally and naturally. Like where we live right now, we live next to a house where the gentleman has a constant set of and some continuing foster kids, and so it's easy to get to know them. And 2 houses down is a facility for people who are autistic, and you run when I'm out walking the dogs and they comment on your dog and you have them pet it. I think the thing that I'd be interested, that I think some of us are trying to, is other than, you know, John and Gail and Ann, and who tend to live at the church a lot, like none of us live at the church location, right? And so I think part of what we're thinking of, if you've seen good models, is how do you create those smaller interactions that seem informal, but they by the nature have to be structured in some way, because we're just naturally not on campus except on Sunday mornings, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think that's kind of the thing we're trying to, I think our discussions are, we totally agree with you. Make it natural, informal, small. But how did we do that? Because we're not out walking our dog by past Easter's home every day or those kind of things. So
Yeah. Well,
any guidance you have on that dimension would be greatly appreciated.
okay, just no guidance, just like my own like humble opinion about it. Really, it's sort of a practical issue, you know. I mean, like, look, we don't actually have those kinds of relationships anymore, even with our own kids. You know, you have to like text them before you even call them. You know, it's like everything is like heavily structured, right? So, you know, going to a museum or an event or a community garden, you know, but then the question is, when do you make that initial contact? And the initial contact could be over lunch at a church meeting after the service. It could be you all attending, you know, I imagine, I hope you would have like a residence meeting, you know, wherever that takes place. And then people interested in getting more involved in the program could come to residence meetings. So after the meeting, coffee. So like that informal contact could be structured there, and that could lead out to, hey, next time I'm going somewhere, would you like to come along? You know, just build on it like that. But the initial informal would have to be, you know, a bit arranged in a group setting like that. Does that sound like something that might work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it fits with your concept, the way I understand it, and I'm still getting my mind on the same way as the services are available if you want. We're going to show up on a regular basis. If you'd love to, great. If it's not your cup of tea, then you don't need to join us for a cup of tea. If, you know,
right.
You know, we're going to have tea out. I mean, physically it's easy and kind of create chances to allow people to opt in, but we're gonna kind of like to get to know you because we like to get to know our neighbors.
That's right. That's right. You know, I mean, I could see this thing evolving into a kind of also like you could have a community bulletin board. Hey, I'm going to this place. Anybody interested? You know, like right in the building, so they can contact so and so. Hey, this is going on this week. You know, and just be inclusive of posting that in the building and having people, you know, giving them the option to participate. I think if you're looking to create those connections, that they can happen. I think it was a Felicia. Did you have your hand up, Felicia? I'm sorry.
I did. Thank you very much for recognizing me, Sam, and thank you for spending your evening with us. I found your talk very informative. I have a question. I don't know if it's logistics, but I'm one of those folks, I'm always thinking about community. And I guess, John, Joe, you might be in a better position. Are our residents going to be like moving in on one grand day? They'll all have house break in one day, or we're going to have, is it going to take us several months before we get ourselves all filled up? Or kind of logistically, how is that going to happen? Because I'm just trying to envision how we as community meet the new community, and begin to start those relationships. But the thing that flagged that question for me is, as they're building a home and beginning to create the rules and the environment around which they are, who will be there to start that? How many of them will start, and how many will have to kind of tag along after it's already started? Do you understand the question in terms of process?
Great question, as always, Felicia. I think the first thing we had learned is ask the experts and listen to the residents. And so Roof Above knows best the way to onboard people, so to speak. Ellie's in those conversations. I don't think we've gotten into that nitty gritty yet. The good news is we have a year. I don't know if Joe has any experience for that, but also would welcome Lori and Sam's advice on the best way. The good news is we're still in a position to listen to the experts and get it right.
Well, if it's like our other properties, the program will fill as people are able to join us. And so none of our properties, as long as I've been at Roof Above, have ever just filled up, 88 persons. Actually, we wouldn't like that anyway, because we really want to kind of grow organically and people get to know each other and not be overwhelmed by one another. So it will be, I'm confident it'll be one of those processes where folks join us as they learn about us and folks direct them to us. And I just want to say, Sam, well, first of all, I mean, if I had a jersey, I'd want you to sign it tonight. I'm just totally in awe of this opportunity to be here. So Lori and John and Caldwell, as somebody who works in the field, to be on the same screen with you right now, this is just really just a true highlight for me. So I just want to thank you. And we, as John is very complimentary of Roof Above, but our staff could listen to this talk tonight and have much to learn from what you've shared tonight. I just love that you took something that can sound so mechanical, like housing first. Oh, it's all about housing. And then you just flip it on its head and say, oh, it's relationships, and they include housing. And I'm just grateful for this opportunity. So I know I'm just fawning over you, and this is totally embarrassing to me and everyone else. But
me too.
I just want to say again, thank you, Lori, for making this possible. Of course, I feel the same way when I'm sitting with Lori in a meeting as well. But again, just truly grateful, and just love the sense of humanness. And I think Caldwell should never undersell what there will be paid staff people there, but there's nothing like someone who is a part of our community that just brings their heart and soul and readiness to befriend and to be a part of this community. So I think Caldwell needs to say, hey, we're not leaving it to the pros. We know what it means to invite people into relationships. So anyway, I'll shut up. But again, Sam, I didn't want you to leave before saying thank you. This has been a real gift.
Yeah. Special gift. Fran.
Well, I just wanted to share some of the folks in the ACE class have actually, and just some of the things that were said just in the last little bit reminded me. Some of us have started to sort of dream about like third place space and how that might be a place, have the coffee pot on, people living with very tight means. And so there's coffee, maybe bring some, sweets or something, and checkerboards, chess, cards, and just opportunities, but for not just for them to hang out and build relationships, but if some of us make sure that we're there too, and then maybe that's part of how we find out who would really enjoy the concert or be part of the community garden or something, if we're starting to build relationships in a setting like that.
Or visit the Catawba Nation with us.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure, I see Anne's hand, but I wanted to make sure, Sam, if you could just get back to answering Felicia's question, because I think it's important for Ellie as she's having conversations with Roof Above about understanding how quickly people move in and some of the wisdom over time that you've learned about that. And then I did see Anne's hand, so just wanted to make sure you got a chance to follow back up on that.
Yeah. Do you think that you will have control over the intake process, or will it be the way that Joe described? Because there's a coordinated entry, who's eligible.
Yes.
So you will have control of it.
No, there is coordinated entry, and so I think
you might not have control, but I have to say, because most of the things that I've done are more the scattered side. I've seen it happen both ways. I don't have a good answer for that, but I can talk to, DSC or Colorado Coalition that does this all the time. And I would feel better if I was actually more informed about that particular question. I think it's an important question. And I can get back to you, Lori.
Yeah,
That'd be
Lori,
great.
the only thing I would say, and Joe, feel free to jump in here. One of the things that we have talked with Roof Above about is, they have a lot of people who are successfully housed in some of their other properties. And so they may work to do some selection from those properties to move into Easter's home and use coordinated entry as a backfill. We got to be careful on and do that all in the right ways. But that would give us a little bit more control over the timing and pacing. So that's all stuff that we need to continue to work out. But Felicia, I think that whether it is a few residents moving in at a time or kind of one by one as we fill the units, I think there's a lot of good opportunity for us as a community to think about what does that welcome look like? And, is it a welcome package? Is it, something, and we'll also have turnover at these apartments, right? Not everybody's going to work out, or perhaps, people's lives change and they move on to some different housing situation. So I think that that's a good thing that we can think about, is what does that look like as people come in.
Great. Ann?
Yeah, what Ellie just said, this isn't my question, but reminds me of my mother-in-law who moved into a retirement community a year and a half ago, and that retirement community offers a red carpet welcome to each person as they come in, and they just put out this red carpet, and the people, the staff and everybody and any residents just clap as they come in, and it's the most beautiful thing. So, we might even consider something like that. I don't know. My question is really kind of embarrassing to even voice, but the thing that I think about most with Caldwell is that few of us live next to people who are desperately poor. And how are we going to develop tolerance for people who have very different ideas about how things should be, in many, many different boring ways, like trash around the place? Or, now if you come to my house, you're going to see clutter, and these people that live in Easter's home may not be a bit cluttery. But I'm not stereotyping those people, but I'm just saying, how are we going to develop tolerance for the little things that can get on nerves until you're thinking on a deeper level? Does that make sense?
Totally.
That's something we have to work on.
Yeah, I think it's there isn't a formula. I would say that the best way to understand others is to spend time with them. There's no substitute for the lived experience, of understanding how people put their apartments together, what they like, what they don't like, why did they put that up on the wall. And I think as you get to know people, you might find that it's not so different after all. But there's no way to know unless you spend time.
One of the opportunities we have around that is in the next year, go visit similar properties, because we may have stereotypes in our minds. And let's go to look at the Rise on Clanton. Let's go to look at Moore Place. Right. And we may immediately find that whatever scenarios we've got in our heads are not how it's playing out elsewhere. And so that gets to that proximity piece that we need to keep working on. The property that Elena Sepulveda is volunteering so much at, great property to visit. And that gives us some concrete realities versus imagination.
Yeah, that's great. I really am talking about us and and our need to develop that. I just think sometimes little things like that are things that can get on people's nerves that we have to address and let everybody live the way they live.
Don't you have friends that get on your nerves?
Yeah, and I was about to say, as long as I don't play country music, I'm going to be okay. They can play anything they want to.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's just like our friends. Some of them you get along with easily and well, and others not so much. But some nice quality about them, and everything in between.
Yeah, and the thing that I would add as a lens to that is that while Easter's home is on Caldwell property, it is the home of the 21 people who are living there. And I think that is something that as a congregation, we're going to have to learn of, like, it's not ours to walk in the front door without, being invited by somebody. And that's going to feel a little bit different for us as a congregation, because we are so eager to welcome and to build relationships and to, embrace a broader community. But that's going to be a change, and we're going to need to think about how we do that appropriately.
Yeah, I've been so grateful that the basic ideas of Housing First have been spoken to our congregation over and over and over again, and will continue to be. And I think what you're saying, Ellie, will also need to be repeated over and over and over again.
Okay, we're probably coming up on 8 o'clock. If it's okay, maybe we'll try to wrap up by then. But what questions do you all have? We've got a global expert here with us.
I might be actually opening a can of worms, but I'm going to go there because I think it's on people's minds. And I'm thinking about the way I want to frame this. There are people in my neighborhood who get drunk and publicly intoxicated. There might be that behavior. I would say, just because there is in my neighborhood, there will likely be here as well. How would you suggest, Sam, that we get our congregation ready for the behavior that is not always socially acceptable on a church campus? What does that, we've talked about that a little already, because we've decided to go with the Housing First model, knowing that that's harm reduction, knowing full well that's where we're headed. But I think when it comes to people are living here and folks are on their way to something in Hope Hall, and they are encountering someone who lives here who is intoxicated or belligerent maybe, or you just pick the unsociable behavior, that, again, I think it's important to note happens everywhere, but it feels off kilter on a church campus.
And I would add asking for money to that, because I know that there's concern about that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. I actually had that one written down. How would you suggest how would you suggest we go about thinking about getting there? we got time to think about and consider what these kind of questions mean for us as a congregation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to anticipate how the building will actually be, but I think it's good to imagine these scenarios. To me, the scenarios that are very troubling, not only to the congregation, but also to many of the residents in the building. It's like, it's not everyone condones these things, but is to have a level of support, service support, where there's like, people don't feel alone, like there's someone in the building that's actually paying attention. And I think that if you ask people, one of the strange things about this Housing First program is that if you ask people who have just been housed in the Housing First program, who should we bring into the building? They'll say, well, I want someone sober. I want someone who's not emotionally upset. I want, like they want like a well-behaved tenant. And it's like, well, but if we actually only allowed well-behaved tenants, you would have never gotten into the program. But everyone wants to have a well-behaved building, and so I think the extent to which you can engage people in the sense of ownership of the place, and if you're going to be drinking, do you want to be drinking on the church grounds, or you want to go downtown? I mean, people drink, it's like, but where are we going to do it, and what is the community we want to create? So then I think, to the extent that you can, be in the role of a facilitator of a community standard that is set by the tenants, rather than be the enforcers of community standards that's set by the congregation, would be a really good way of making everybody's life a lot easier.
And that goes hand in hand. So thank you for that, Sam. It goes hand in hand with so many other things that we are trying to work on with anti-racism and LGBT inclusion, of how do we center those who we're trying to recognize, empower, see, and come alongside. And so, great questions. Thank you for that.
Great questions. There is one other thing related to this, which is that it's going to be what you do, what your reaction is to every one tenant is going to be known by everybody in the building, so it's not like you're going to be operating this in some invisible way. Everyone's going to know everybody's business, that way. And so I think to be and at the same time, you want to be totally fair to the individual circumstances of that person, and yet fair to the group. That's a difficult challenge to meet. But there's also, we're talking about these behaviors. There's a continuum of behaviors. I mean, I would say under no circumstances should anybody, you or the tenants, tolerate illegal behavior or behavior that's a lease violation. I think that what we want to do is have a community that lives by the same rules as we all do. We're not here to kind of give people, extra advantages. We're just here to give them the same advantages as we all have. So, if somebody is like doing something illegal, that's a police thing. That's not us, and we call the police, and I think that's totally fine. And I think if someone becomes a danger to themselves and they're like depressed and they're not opening door to their housing unit, we're going to call mobile crisis. They're going to be involuntarily hospitalized, just like any of us or our relatives would. So I think that's like as we bend towards giving people opportunity and giving people voice and all of that, there is also a level at which we just want to make it as fair as it is for everybody else.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sam. Finding that balance, as you say, of grace and order. Great. Are we about ready to wrap up? Does anybody have one last question? I'm sorry, I know I've got some background noise here. Lori, how did you want to close? I've got one quick thing to share, but did you want to? Obviously, we want to thank Sam. This is a rare opportunity we've been given. We will record this. Please, church, as you interact with others, please promote what you've learned tonight and encourage them to look for the link to this and watch it. Lori?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, and thank you to everyone for bringing the questions. I think we need to continue to bring the questions and sit with them. And sit with, one of the things I've learned, I remember as just being a young social worker in training and thinking, oh, I know the answer, and Sam is going to answer it this way. And I'd have to go home and say, oh, gosh, I just learned something here, because he was really focusing in on the situation. And so I think there's a lot of humility. I think Pat mentioned humility. And I think there's a lot of humility in this work. And anyway, Sam, I'm hoping this isn't the last time you're with us. And I'm just grateful for you and for the work that you've done and just for our paths crossing. But with that, I will turn it over to if you, I don't know if you want to say any closing, and then we'll just turn it over to John.
No, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It was great to get to meet you and to hear about this project, and wish you all the best going forward and commend you for going forward.
Sam, thank you very, very much. And we have particular thanks to Lori for her vision and context and professional knowledge to know that we needed to hear from Sam. And we do hope, Sam, to spend more time with you. I want to close this out. A lot of this is abstract, and we know we have every night 3,000 people in Charlotte who are on the streets, 1 million in America, give or take. Those are big statistics. But tonight, at the end of the day, right before I came over here, I was invited through a mutual friend to sit down with a man named Mike. Mike lives on the streets in a wheelchair in the Elizabeth neighborhood. He's a diabetic. His meds got messed up. He lost the lower part of his leg. There are, as Gail and Ann know, there are many people, not many, but there are certain ones around the church that we've gotten to know of. I had never met Mike, but a friend had said, Mike, you might want to look into Easter's Home. This is what's happening. And so I sat down with Mike and explained what it is. And Mike doesn't bring disabilities or addictions or anything. He's just poor and in a wheelchair, and he's an amputee. And he just minds his own business. And to describe Easter's Home to him was to see hope on the face of a man. And I said, I don't know how it's going to work, but get in line, call it Roof Above. Here's the phone number. Start looking into it right away. And he was clearly greeted with some hope that maybe he hadn't seen in quite a while. And that's what you all are building here. We worship a God of hope and possibility. So let us close with a prayer to that God, and we will call it a night. Let's go to the Lord. God of grace, ever since you called the Israelites into the promised land, you have made it clear that land and property and place is not a private privilege, but a gift to be shared for all. In Christ, you called us all to love our neighbor, whatever it takes, unconditionally, in the same grace with which you embrace us and our problems and our mistakes and our checkered past. So walk with Sam as he continues to advocate and champion this important movement. Grant our Easter's Home leadership team wisdom. Grant us courage to ask the hard questions and comfort to share in them together and go ahead of us to the 21 people that you are already selecting, whether it is Mike or somebody else, to be our neighbors, that we may learn from them and be transformed by worshiping you in this way. In Christ we pray all these things, and with their mics off, all God's people said,
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all.
Thank you, John.
Well, thank you, Jane. Thinking about Haynes and you and this week in your lives. Bless you.
Oh, how sweet. Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. I think
Thank you,
that
Lord.
was,
Well done.
yeah, well, I'm telling you, that's his strength, is just I've watched him do it for years. So maybe we can get him back in person at some point next year.
We will find the money. And Jane, thank you for joining us. See you soon.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Okay.